Hello. Yeah, so I'm putting myself out there and offering up this recording of my latest blog post titled Everyday Miracles Remind Us of God's Faithfulness. My name is Angie, and I am the founder of My Sun and Shade Ministries for women, children, and families. And you can go online and visit my website, www.mysunandshade.com. And I'm not sure if I need to include the www part anymore, but I did. Anyways, I'm sitting in my office right now, enjoying some peace and quiet. My adult son, Isaiah, has officially moved out of our home. And last night was his first night in his new home. And he came over for coffee and breakfast in the morning today and to grab a few more boxes and head back over to his place. But it was really nice to see him this morning and to ask how everything went with his move. Last night, I went to Walmart with him and we picked out a comforter and sheet set so that he could, put it on his new bed in his new room last night. So it was a lot of fun. And I'm so happy he allowed me to be a part of that whole process. Okay, let me dig into this latest blog post and get going. Okay, so here we go. Everyday miracles remind us of God's faithfulness. I'm going to get my reading voice going now. Without the hope and thrill of a possible miracle happening throughout our day, life could get mundane and even boring. I'm not talking about the dead getting raised or the blind being able to see type of miracles. I'm talking about the times when dinner turns out good, when the car keys are where they are supposed to be, and when fresh brewed coffee is made by someone else other than yourself. Now, those are miracles. Then there is the sudden appearance of a missing sock, or when we are on time for work, or we find a dollar bill lying on the sidewalk, or better yet, a $20 bill, which I have found, by the way. Miracles do happen, you know. My latest miracle was beyond belief. I literally could not believe what I was looking at. I had just spent a rushed hour in the Salvation Army because my husband was waiting for me in his truck. We were wanting to go to a shopping mall, then out to eat afterwards, date night stuff, but he let me run into the thrift store first. The bummer was I had the jitters. We had just spent a couple of hours visiting with friends where I eagerly sipped 4 cups of tea. Yeah, I know. Usually it's coffee, but this time it was 4 cups of tea. But it was so good. And the tea had come directly from England on our friend's last trip. And they served it to us in fancy teacups with cream and sugar, and I just couldn't pass it up. I mean, who could? They presented it in such a beautiful way. So there I was in the checkout line at Salvation Army with the jitters, trying to evaluate my good finds and whether or not I needed them. Do I need the skirt? Do I need this piece of pottery? Is this item half off? My mind was every which way at the counter, and the memory of that moment was a blur. All I do remember is my shaking hand, holding my debit card, then handing it over to a lady with way too much black eye makeup on. And she asked me to sign something. That's all I remember. Out the door I went to my husband's waiting truck, which soon sped away towards the shopping mall. And I had one goal in mind, and that was to look at some Clinique makeup at Macy's. That's my go-to place ever since my Aunt Diane turned me on to that way back when I was 13 years old. So Macy's is directly where we went, and it was going to be a short and sweet shopping trip. And then we were supposed to go get some good food for dinner. Somewhere along the way, like it usually does happen when we go shopping, both my husband and I got distracted by the great sales at Macy's. And at one point, he was looking at suits that were 50% off, and I was browsing jewelry that caught my attention, which I actually did buy some. When we convened again, we thought it was high time I bought my makeup and we were on our way. Except at the Clinique counter, I couldn't produce my debit card. By this time, my head was spinning from having way too much caffeine coursing through my body, and I couldn't see clearly. After practically dumping all the items in my crossbody purse out onto the counter, I turned to my husband and said, "Call the Salvation Army right now." He looked at me. He looked at me like I was nuts. "What are you talking about?" And he was getting me so frustrated. I must have looked like a mad woman because he had no confidence in what I was saying, let alone the way I was acting. Thank goodness I could still find my Macy's credit card. I made my makeup purchase, then ran to the nearest bench to call the Salvation Army. They were closed. No one was answering the phone. I rushed my husband out of the shopping mall, and we drove back to the thrift store in hopes of finding my lost debit card in the parking lot or something. Phew, the lights were still on inside the Salvation Army, and there were 2 cars parked outside. So I pounded on the front doors. After about 3 minutes or so, a bewildered lady unlocked the door and asked, "Can I help you?" "I believe I left my bank debit card on the counter earlier. Can I check?" She felt bad for me, I could tell. So she let me in. I must have looked really panicked. Suddenly, the lady with too much black eye makeup on showed up and began looking for my debit card with me. But to no avail. It was nowhere to be found. My husband asked me to look in every nook and cranny in my purse, in my jean pockets, in my coat pockets, and in my thrift store shopping bags. Nope, gone. But I didn't feel like it was lost. We were concerned at this point and began asking the Lord what we should do. The first step was to call the bank hotline. I spoke to a kind female who suggested I place a hold on the debit card since I felt like it was still in my possession. I just couldn't find it. For the next several days, we searched for that missing debit card. My husband went through the truck again. I went through my purse again. It was gone. By this time, I was sick with what this meant for me. Have you ever lost a credit card or a bank debit card? It literally disrupts so many accounts online and stops all automatic payments. And it can be very, very frustrating getting those accounts restored. I kept telling my husband, "I feel like the card is still in my possession somewhere." He had a hard time believing this because we had looked everywhere. Then one afternoon, a few days later, while I was sitting at my desk at work, I opened up my purse to look at my notary card. And there it was. The missing debit card was sitting between my notary card and my insurance card. As I was holding it in my hand, my eyes couldn't believe what I was seeing. I praised and thanked the Lord, and so much relief washed over me. Then I was completely amazed. The debit card was in my possession the whole time. The Lord had given me a gut feeling that the card was still in my possession. I just couldn't see it. Isn't faith like that? Sometimes we get discouraged and feel low about life, and faith seems out of reach somehow, like it is lost. But faith is resting right below the surface, unseen, just waiting to be revealed again. Healing occurs when our hearts are healed from hurts and offenses. Then faith blooms in our hearts once again. Running to Jesus with any wound of the heart is an important part of being a Christian. When we go to him right away, he can touch us and make us whole. Faith is a precious gift from God, and we never want to disregard its part in our spiritual walk. Walk by faith and not by sight. 2 Corinthians 5:7. Have faith in God, Mark 11:22. All things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purposes, Romans 8:28. I'm so thankful for the many miracles that happened during my search for the missing debit card. The lady who unlocked the closed doors at the Salvation Army didn't have to, but she did. And I was able to speak to the lady with the black eye makeup on who took my payment. The kind rep who I spoke with on the bank hotline didn't have to suggest I place a hold on my card, but she did. And you know what? I didn't even know there was a difference between placing a hold and canceling a debit card, but now I do. But because she suggested I place a hold on the card instead of canceling it, all I had to do was call the bank hotline again and lift the hold. And believe it or not, I was able to use my debit card immediately. If I had canceled the debit card, there would have been a 10-day wait period for a new one to get mailed to me. And we all know it takes way longer than 10 days for a new debit card to appear in the mail. See how the Lord was in everything that happened? Those are everyday miracles, and we all experience them. I believe everyday miracles happen to women of faith all the time. I must believe that the Lord was orchestrating all those little things that happened, all the little miracles, to build my faith, just like he wants to build your faith too. He desires that we put all of our trust in him in every circumstance. Sometimes we question frustrating things that happen during the day, but think of it as the Lord orchestrating events behind the scenes that will cause our hearts to turn towards him. My husband was astonished when I told him I found my missing debit card in my purse of all places. We had gone through that purse so many times, but then all of a sudden my eyes were opened and I saw the debit card, and it was a wonderful miracle, an absolutely wonderful feeling. I felt the Lord's Spirit lead me to believe the debit card was still in my possession somewhere. Even though everything pointed to hope being lost, my heart still said believe. The Lord proved himself faithful to me, for indeed this was a miracle in so many ways, and I hope I never underestimate the little things that make life exciting, even if they're clothed in frustration sometimes. This situation made me turn to the Lord and ask him for help, and he proved himself faithful to me. Believing in everyday miracles builds our faith, plus it keeps our hope alive. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Keep fighting the good fight of faith, dear friends, and I hope you are super blessed by this testimony of God's goodness and faithfulness to me. If you've enjoyed this blog post reading, please like my post and visit me online, www.mysunandshade.com, and you can review all of my blog posts from the last few years. All right, much love.